Hi, I'm Nico. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to talk about what is probably the most powerful tool you have as a photographer. Let's do it. There is a myth in photography that is very widespread. It's the myth of coverage. From camera brands who are trying to convince you that you need the holy trinity of three zoom lenses to cover any possible focal length from 14 millimeters to 200. And this is like repeated online conversations, and so many photographers fall for this trick. And why is coverage a myth? It's because you, as a photographer, have a tool that is way more powerful than absolute coverage. It is a tool so powerful that it allows you to bend space and time like a Jedi or a Hobbit or whatever they have in Star Trek. And that tool is sequencing. Sequencing basically means using more than one photograph to convey your idea. And then the order in which you show these photographs or their relative position to each other, if you show them in one frame, is your sequencing. Why is it so powerful and why does it solve any issue of coverage? Because you can associate very different ideas, very different subjects, in a sequence. You can sequence two pictures that are taken years apart or halfway across the world apart, so you have access. You can put ideas together in a way that no lens could ever associate in the same frame. Let's look at a concrete example. I was in Niagara Falls, Ontario last week, and I wanted to show how hard the town has been hit by COVID-19 and the loss of income, the very important loss of income that it has suffered, and how that loss of income for the town, for the community, affects individuals. How do you show this in one picture? That picture is impossible. For the fun of it, I went to an AI text-to-image generator, because those are all the rage these days, and I entered a homeless man in front of Niagara Falls. So yeah, this is one picture that conveys my idea. The problem is that picture doesn't exist. In the real world, you could spend a year camping in front of the falls with your camera. It's very unlikely that a derelict homeless person will suddenly like stop by and picnic in front of the falls. It's pretty much an impossibility. But what you can do, and what I did, is use just one simple prime lens, a 35, and do a sequence. So here's a possible sequence. I start with a picture of the falls. I shot them under like the worst possible light on a gray day, and I had a composition that kind of emphasizes the violence of the fall and the mist. That's a place to start my sequence. Another possible place to start my sequence is this. I shoot the falls from a distance, backlit, and again, this is all about the power of the falls and the cloud that they produce rather than the actual landscape feature of the falls. That's one place to start a sequence. And then I go on. Next, I can show a boarded up hotel because there's no tourists coming because of the COVID. I can show this guy who is literally carrying the weight of the world on his shoulder. I can show empty storefronts. This picture like gives me the information that an election is coming up. It's also an empty street with no cars, no pedestrians. Gives a feeling of gloom with the clouds coming soon. More businesses that have like gone bankrupt and haven't been replaced by anything else yet. I can have that person sitting across from a convenience store, framed through an empty bus. I have the dirt in the windows. Have this picture give a very like unhospitable quality, and then I can end with a note of hope, a rainbow over the falls. Here's how, using one very simple prime lens, not worrying at all about coverage, I used sequencing to convey a complex idea. You might say, Nico, you don't always like have an opportunity to submit 10 pictures to illustrate one simple concept. You'd be right. I showed you 10 pictures. I can do it with two. For example, the falls and that lady waiting outside the convenience store. That tells the story I set out to tell. I can use that picture of the falls and the guy with his banded back. I can use any combination of two pictures as long as I have the falls to locate where the story is happening. And on the other side of the page, something that shows the dire conditions that the city is in. So this works for journalistic, documentary photography. It really works for anything. Here's an example that I've been doing for years in wedding photography, and that happens to every wedding photographer. That's a situation where they'll often tell you, oh, you need the Holy Trinity. These days, if I shoot a wedding, I shoot it with just a 50mm. Like, that's right, I shoot a wedding with one lens, one prime. So for this wedding, which I shot entirely with 50mm on my Leica, here comes the speeches. This is the mother of the bride, and this is a nice picture. I get to have the mother giving the speech and the bride listening, and I have the emotion between them, and they both share the frame. So this is a best case scenario. But what happens next? It's the father of the bride's speech. So here he is next to his wife. I have some emotion. The shot is nice, but I don't have the bride anymore. Like I don't like in one picture locate this at a wedding and show who the bride is in that like perfect way that the previous picture worked. So I made the mistake there for a minute. I actually walked around the table and tried to include the bride. This picture is terrible. Like, yes, I have coverage, yes, I have all the elements in one simple picture, but the bride is turning her back, she's out of focus, the mother of the bride is blocking the father, the composition is just atrocious. All because I cared for coverage instead of relying on sequencing. Here's another moment where I thankfully got it right. This time is this guy. I think he was the brother of the groom. He's giving his speech, and I can't find a way to have him and the bride and groom in the same picture. I can't. There's no coverage. There's no lens that will get those two guys, those three characters, unless I have a 14mm in the middle of the table. It would look atrocious. So what I do is I sequence first him, then the groom and bride reacting. If we print an album for this, maybe I can have them on opposite pages. Works fantastic. So I think that should be clear enough. Use sequencing. It is an extremely powerful tool. It is probably the most powerful tool in your bag as a storyteller. Forget about trying to put too many elements in one frame to tell a complex story. Just take clean, nice pictures of one element and then a clean, nice picture of the next element, and focus on creativity and visual forms, and put some beauty in your photographs rather than trying to put all the information in one frame. Hope this inspires you. Hope this helps. I will be back sometime with some other topic. Thank you for tuning in. Cheers.